We rested but one day in Cincinnati, and then resumed our journey to Sandusky. I will take the reader as our fellow passenger, and pledge myself to perform the distance with all possible dispatch. Our place of destination is, in the first instance, is Columbus. It is distant about 120 miles from Cincinnati, but there is a macadamized road, a rare blessing, the whole way. And the rate of traveling upon it is 6 miles an hour. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning in a great mail coach, whose huge cheeks are so very ruddy and plethoric that it appears to be troubled with a tendency of blood to the head. Dropsical it certainly is, for it will hold a dozen passengers inside. But wonderful to add, it is very clean and bright, being nearly new, and rattles through the streets of Cincinnati gaily. Our way lies through a beautiful country, richly cultivated and luxuriant in its promise of an abundant harvest. Sometimes we pass a field where the strong, bristling stalks of Indian corn look like a crop of walking sticks, and sometimes an enclosure where the green wheat is springing up among a labyrinth of stumps. The primitive worm fence is universal, and an ugly thing it is. But the farms are neatly kept, and save for these differences, one might be traveling just now in Kent. We often stopped to water at a roadside inn, which is always dull and silent. The coachman dismounts and fills his bucket and holds it to the horses' heads. There is scarcely ever anyone to help him. There are seldom any loungers standing around, and never any stable company with jokes to crack. Sometimes when we have changed our team, there is a difficulty in starting again, arising out of the prevalent mode of breaking a young horse, which is to catch him, harness him against his will, and put him in a stagecoach without further notice. But we get on somehow or other, after a great many kicks and a violent struggle, and jog on as before again. Occasionally, when we stop to change, some 2 or 3 half-drunken loafers will come loitering out with their hands in their pockets, or will be seen kicking their heels in rocking chairs, or lounging on the windowsill, or sitting on a rail within the colonnade. They have not often anything to say, though, either to us or to each other, but sit there idly staring at the coach and horses. The landlord of the inn is usually among them, and seems of all the party to be the least connected with the business of the house. Indeed, he is with reference to the tavern what the driver is in relation to the coach and passengers. Whatever happens in his sphere of action, he is quite indifferent and perfectly easy in his mind. The frequent change of coachmen works no change or variety in the coachman's character. He is always dirty, sullen, taciturn. If he be capable of smartness of any kind, moral or physical, he has a faculty of concealing it, which is truly marvelous. He never speaks to you as you sit beside him on the box, and if you speak to him, he answers, if at all, in monosyllables. He points out nothing on the road and seldom looks at anything, being to all appearance thoroughly weary of it and of existence generally. As to doing the honors of his coach, his business, as I have said, is with the horses. The coach follows because it is attached to them and goes on wheels, not because you are in it. Sometimes, towards the end of a long stage, he suddenly breaks out into a discordant fragment of an election song, but his face never sings along. It is only his voice, and not often that. He always chews and always spits, and never encumbers himself with a handkerchief. The consequences to the box passenger, especially when the wind blows towards him, are not agreeable. Whenever the coach stops, and you can hear the voices of the inside passengers, or whenever any bystander addresses them, or anyone among them, or they address each other, you will hear one phrase repeated over and over and over again to the most extraordinary extent. It is an ordinary and unpromising phrase enough, being neither more nor less than, yes, sir. But it is adapted to every variety of circumstance and fills up every pause in the conversation. Thus, the time is 1 o'clock at noon. The scene, a place where we are to stay and dine on the journey. The coach drives up to the door of an inn. The day is warm, and there are several idlers lingering about the tavern and waiting for the public dinner. Among them is a stout gentleman in a brown hat, swinging himself to and fro in a rocking chair on the pavement. As the coach stops, a gentleman in a straw hat looks out the window. Straw hat to the stout gentleman in the rocking chair. I reckon that's Judge Jefferson, ain't it? Brown hat, still swinging, speaking very slowly and without any emotion whatsoever. Yes, sir. Straw hat, warm weather, Judge. Yes, sir. There was a snap of cold last week. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A pause. They look at each other very seriously. Straw hat. I calculate you'll have got through that case of the corporation, Judge, by this time now. Yes, sir. How did the verdict go, sir? For the defendant, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Both, musingly, as each gazes down the street. Yes, sir. The conversational powers of the company having been by this time pretty heavily taxed, the straw hat opens the door and gets out, and all the rest alight also. We dine soon afterwards with the boarders in the house and have nothing to drink but tea and coffee, as they are both very bad and the water is worse. I asked for brandy, but it is a temperance hotel, and spirits are not to be had for love or money. This preposterous forcing of unpleasant drinks down the reluctant throats of travelers is not at all uncommon in America. But I never discovered that the scruples of such wincing landlords induced them to preserve any unusually nice balance between the quality of their fare and their scale of charges. On the contrary, I rather suspected them of diminishing the one and exalting the other, by way of recompense for the loss of their profit on the sale of spirituous liquors. After all, the plainest course for persons of such tender consciences would be a total abstinence from tavern keeping. Dinner over, we get into another vehicle which is ready at the door. The coach has been changed in the interval, and resume our journey, which continues through the same kind of country until the evening. We reached Columbus shortly before 7 o'clock and stayed there to refresh that day and night, having excellent apartments in a very large unfinished hotel called the Neal House, which were richly fitted with the polished wood of the black walnut and opened on a handsome portico and stone veranda, like rooms in some Italian mansion. The town is clean and pretty, and of course is going to be much larger. It is the seat of the state legislature of Ohio, and lays claim in consequence to some consideration and importance.